Hey everybody! In all the excitement yesterday, we didn't get a chance to do a devotional that I had prepared for us. And ordinarily, I think I probably would just let that go. But as I was doing my reading this morning here, the verses that I was got to put in my heart here had kind of come back up in a different book, and so I just felt really compelled to share that with you guys here today. It's the story of the transfiguration of Jesus, and it's found in a couple of the Gospels, but the one I'm reading from here is in Mark chapter 9. It starts in verse 2, and it says, 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them alone up a high mountain privately. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiantly white, more so than any launderer in the world could have bleached them. Then Elijah appeared before them along with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. So Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make three shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For they were afraid and did not know what to say. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came from the cloud. This is my dear son. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore except Jesus. And I think this is, there's just so much packed in here in the imagery, and particularly if you were a Jew in the first century. In the Old Testament, God appeared uh, as a cloud. And so for a Jewish person at that time, that would have been really significant that they were in the clouds. And God's announcing of his son, this is the same as John the Baptist earlier in Matthew, I think chapter 3, when God's voice came down and announced that Jesus was his son. Elijah and Moses being up there are also a really big deal here for the Jews. Moses, as you know, is the one who received the Ten Commandments, so he represents the law. And Elijah represents the prophets, and it was prophesied that he was going to come before the Messiah. And so if you know all this, then you know that this moment, this mountaintop that they are on, is it doesn't get any better than this, right? And I think in some respects, mission trips can be a lot like that, right? We can be grow close as a team, and we can really connect with the people that we are here to serve, and we can just have such amazing moments of clarity and just of closeness with God that it can be a real mountaintop experience. And those are great, except we're not meant to live on the mountaintops. Right? And this is exactly what happens here with Peter, right? Peter's response is, man, this is awesome. Like we are in the actual presence, the fully God presence of Jesus, right? In this moment, Jesus's humanity is taken away, and Peter sees the true image of Jesus in his godness. And so he doesn't want to leave, right? He wants to stay there for a bit because it's not going to get any better than that. But again, we're not meant to stay on the mountaintops. And I think this is what we get from this section of scripture that when we follow Jesus, the momentum that carries us up the top of the mountain to that moment, right? That God moment, or that moment where everything just feels awesome. That same momentum inevitably will carry us down the mountain, right? Back to our regular lives, back to our jobs, and back to school, and back to all the things that we were doing, prior to coming here. And that's how it's supposed to be, right? The mountaintops are meant to be reference points and things for us to look back on and to draw on as we go about the everyday aspects of our lives. And so I think there can be a tendency sometimes for us to want to hold on to the mountaintop, right? To want to capture and hold on to the experience that we just had, on a mission trip, and maybe try and bottle that and keep that. Maybe it's already thinking about planning the next trip back, or the next um, trip to kind of fill that gap to create that next mountaintop experience. And it's not bad to go, but really, I think the question that we should be asking ourselves is what's next, right? What has this mountaintop experience been preparing you for? And so as we go home, and I think as many of you have shared and Tuli talked the other day about this, that the goal of missions is for us to go and certainly to serve and to experience the global work that God is doing, but also to ignite in us an understanding of how do we live missionally where God has placed us. And so the question that I hope that you all are wrestling with as you prepare to leave and as you're taking these long flights home is what's next? Is it further involvement in missions? Is it maybe serving in some other ministry? Maybe it's starting that Bible study with those people that you work with or your roommates who maybe don't know Christ. What is the next thing, that you're being propelled forward into from this mountaintop experience? Because as we learned here from the scripture, that the mountaintops are awesome and they can be really powerful moments, but really they are there to help propel us forward, not to stay, and to move forward, to continue to grow, to be more like Jesus and more on that journey that he has us on. So one way that we can do that, I think, is by being prepared to tell your story. And so as you're preparing to go home, think about that if you haven't been thinking about it. Not just the whole story, but think about the people that you have in your lives that know you went on this trip, that maybe aren't interested in Jesus, but are curious enough to know, what were you doing in Thailand? And so you want to have a simple explanation, maybe it's 30 seconds or 1 minute, that gives them some information, but maybe leaves a little bit hanging, right? Because they're not interested in hearing about how God moved, but they might be interested in hearing about how it was a really powerful experience for you. And so meeting them where they're at and having that simple 30-second to 1 minute explanation of what you did here in the past 10 days. And at the same time, you want to have a little bit of a more longer version of the story for people who maybe are a little bit more curious, and you want to share a little bit more about why that was so powerful, and maybe you do want to talk about how God moved in you and in your time here, all the way up to that person that's going to want to grab coffee and sit down for like an hour and just really uh, have you tell them everything that happened. And so one way that we can prepare for the what's next is to really think about and pray about what it is that we want to share with people wherever they're at as you come back from this trip. So we hope you guys have a very safe and uneventful journey home. Amy, I'll be leaving Tuesday night, Lord willing, unless something else changes, and should be home probably Thursday. So uh, it's been great being on this trip with you guys, and look forward to our debrief here in about 2 weeks that Ethan's going to set up to kind of hear some of those next steps. So take care, everybody. Thank you.